Hello everyone and welcome to today's panel debate on sporting events. This afternoon we'll be exploring how you create an immersive and engaging experience for audiences at home and in the stadium. My name's Zoe Mutter and I'm Deputy Editor of AV Magazine, and today I'm joined by a panel of experts from Creative Technology, IMG and NEP. Now, before we start the discussion, could you each introduce yourselves and tell us a bit about your involvement with sporting events? We'll start with you.
Okay, my name is Steve Purkess. I'm Head of Sport for Creative Technology. My involvement is very much looking after all the work that Creative Technology do in the sporting market. So we're involved in lots of different sports: tennis, golf, cricket, and we have long-standing relationships with lots of clients. So I manage with the team of project managers that work with me those contracts and try and grow our business in sport.
Yep.
So hi, I'm Alan Bright. I'm Director of Engineering for IMG. So IMG as a company has involvement at lots of levels across very many sports, but I work on the TV production side. So the events we do, we work quite closely with this company actually on the golf, the European Tour Golf. We do a lot with Premier League for the football coverage. We own a basketball league in Europe, and we do quite a large range of sports across Europe and the world. And then also we have a co-venture with HBS. HBS are the company that do the Football World Cup. We have a co-venture with them called IGBS, and we produce events such as the Asian Games last year in Jakarta. And this year we're doing the Rugby World Cup in Japan, which starts in September. So I'm their Head of Venue Engineering.
Hello everyone, I'm Johan Spindler. I'm ex-creative person within NEP. I nowadays work as in sales for NEP Media Solutions. A former senior director directing major events with NEP and our clients. I'm here on behalf of my good colleague and friend Brian Clark, director from Major Events. And Major Events for NEP is servicing and partnering with
Rugby World Cup.
Rugby World Cup as an
One of them.
example. So my background is directing major events in sports.
Okay.
I'm Ben Tompsett. I'm the Head of Broadcast here at Creative Technology. I look at particularly on major sporting events, the broadcast side of the Creative Technologies portfolio. So that might be broadcast RF, RF audio, communications, IP networking, fiber networking, as well as looking at the rest of our portfolio, but working with the broadcasters rather than with the sporting side of things.
Yep.
So that could be studios, etc.
Okay, fantastic. And can we just start with taking a look at what audiences are actually looking for in sporting events, both in the stadium or venue and at home? We begin with you, Steve.
Okay. I think we've all seen a trend in a lot of live sports arenas of trying to increase the theatre and entertainment around sports. I mean, it's been around for a long time in the US, but it seems to be gathering a lot of pace around a lot of the more traditional sort of offerings, particularly for us in the UK. Everyone's looking for engagement with a younger audience. It's quite competitive out there. There's lots of other options for young people these days, and we do our best to bring the show to the sport, and we do that through different delivery of temporary technology to the sports that we work with.
Yep. And Alan, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, from my company's focus really is concentrating on the best TV coverage of an event we can do. But we've noticed recently that a lot of events, that is by no means satisfies what they want to do and what they want to offer to their audiences, both their broadcast audiences and their live audiences. So, for example, at the Rugby World Cup now, we will have a 360-degree camera filming the team arrivals and their team entrance onto the pitch, and we'll be streaming that live. We would, it's not going to happen now actually, but we were planning to do a live stream of the ref cam, so the guy on the pitch, so audiences can see that. So we're conscious, although my company's main focus is to give you the traditional TV coverage in the best possible way with all multiple angles and replays, that there is a growing market and a demand both from the federations that stage the events and from audiences themselves to see other angles and see other aspects and to have diversity of coverage, which we may not control directly.
Yeah. And Johan?
Well, as a former director, I see that full arenas, packed arenas, is the best to create a good show for the people at home. So working together with event organizers and venues and in-house productions in venues is good for the broadcast.
Sure.
And therefore looking to expand collaboration between normal broadcasting and event productions is a key to success both at the venues and at home.
Yeah.
For the audience at home.
And Ben, you seeing any changes in audience demands?
In audience demand, in what people are actually wanting at a sporting event. Yeah, I suppose people now want a bit more razzmatazz when they're there. It's the Americanization, I think, of a lot of these sporting events. That people are seeing what's going on over there. People expect a bit more of a show when they turn up at these kinds of events. And from the actual sporting organisers themselves, they want people to arrive early. Yeah. And they want them leaving late. They want people to start spending money in the bars.
Are there any specific examples of that where they've combined the sporting event with, say, the entertainment, so it's more of a spectacle?
Yeah, I think so. I think there's a great example of what they're doing with the NFL, particularly over here in the UK as well. We're not kind of used to these kind of razzmatazz things going on. And there's these tailgate parties that they have over in the States. They've introduced that now over at Wembley here as well. It's not on the same kind of scale because we don't have massive car parks sitting outside of things like they do there. But it's putting on that show outside, so the people are turning up at these events early. They've got more fan engagement. It's getting the fans involved more with the sport, with the stadia, with the merchandise as well. Of course, that's one of the big things that they're all trying to push on.
I'm an ice hockey fan. I produced a lot of ice hockey events. And when we saw the Las Vegas Golden Knights come into the stage, put on this show that they do in their home venue, it's fantastic. They engage the audience. They make the audience a part of the show, and that attracts broadcasters and it attracts people coming to the venues.
Yeah.
And if you ever have a chance to go to a Golden Knights game, do it because it's spectacular. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
Does it look good on television as well?
It looks fantastic on television, and that's what I mean. How to engage the two and get them to work together more. It becomes good TV and a great show.
And if we could just move on to the obstacles you face, could you highlight any and how you've actually resolved those issues? Ben, if you
the big one's always budget. So the budget is always the number one thing. You know, everybody. Well, not everybody has champagne taste with lemonade money, but it quite often can be the case, and it's trying to manage those expectations, I suppose.
Well, on a technical side, being that I want the best seat in the house for my cameras and my camera operators. I see technology as a way to solve some of those problems with remote RF, so that we can share the space, because we both want the VIP seats for our camera angles, and the venues want to sell those seats. So if we can find a good way with technology to solve that, it would be perfect.
Yeah. I mean, from my point of view, the biggest challenge is something that entertains the live audience and the TV audience. And quite often, or traditionally, to be frank, that's been a conflict. I mean, putting the stadium into darkness leads to anticipation for the audience quite often, or what's going to happen. But for the TV audience, that's not great. You've got a blank screen now. So that's an obvious example, but that continues in terms of the way the projections onto the pitch or whatever can look fantastic live, but in TV, if you've got the wrong camera angle, they look awful. So what would be great going forward is if, you know, and that's why we were having that discussion a moment ago, is if these events are done in collaboration with the TV audience, because you always end up in this argument, well, we've got 100,000 people in the stadium, yeah, but we've got 1 billion in the TV audience, so who's going to win that argument? And it depends, and quite often it comes down to politics and who's in the stadium at that point in time. So actually what would be nice is to be able to, and technology can help us now with this, is make it look good for both and make it entertaining for both, because that has been a big challenge on many events I've done, even the biggest ones. Even the Olympics have months of arguing over that sort of thing.
Right. So that's the key to success, is collaborating moving forward.
To consider both audiences, and if you can achieve that, then you've done really well, because it's quite hard.
Yeah, I mean, I think Alan makes a very good point, because often the two disciplines are very much siloed, and there's not a lot of cross communication between them, particularly at the early stages of planning. So with some of our clients, we're seeing that change quite radically now. I mean, we have a very good relationship with the IAAF on the athletics, and some of the pre-planning we're doing now is it really addresses those dark moments where it's very much part of the theatre of sport, is to create anticipation for what's happening, whether it's a player entrance or athlete entry onto the pitch. You just have to create some drama around that, and there's a lot of stadiums and arenas are putting in modern lighting, which allows that to happen. Traditionally, it hasn't been a problem, because the lighting, you had to wait 7 minutes to put the lighting back on. So, but now with the more modern stadium lighting, you can have it down and up in at the flick of a switch. But what we're doing with the IAAF broadcast side is actually planning those moments together, so that you don't end up with nothing to show on broadcast. You've got a graphics piece that's being generated in conjunction with that special projection moment that brings the whole sports stadia to life for the spectators. But that's all augmented with a very good treatment from broadcast, which compensates and adds into it. And it's happening, but I mean, it's a long time. It's been a long time coming.
Yes,
I think
it has. Yeah. Painful process at times.
Are there any other technologies that are having an impact at the moment? Ben, I know you mentioned earlier IP technology and remote production.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly helping, and it's aiding in those productions now as well, because it's enabling you to kind of go places where you haven't been able to go before. So a good example of that now is what they're doing at Wimbledon, where all the courts now are covered via 4K cameras. If you were to try to do that with the traditional SDI workflow, well, you could do it, but it would be extremely difficult, because there's just a hell of a lot of data going around. So now you can kind of link all of that up via IP. It makes things a hell of a lot easier. Just in terms of cabling for a start, and the actual infrastructure that then goes in on top of it. The compound, it reduces that size. And then, of course, what you can do on top of that, and most of the industry is kind of still in an early stage of this, is remote producing a lot of these things as well. So because we're going down those IP workflows, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be on site to be producing this content. You could potentially be elsewhere and have people in a remote workspace that could be potentially doing more than one experience or game or in one day. They could be covering multiple things. So if you're a football match or something like that, and you can remotely go to a remote workplace, have one playback engineer that everybody loves working with, but can't have because he can't be in Wrexham and Cardiff and Swindon all in one day, but potentially he could be if he was working in a remote workplace.
Yeah. And you're doing that with Formula One as well at the moment? Are you using
So yeah, the Formula One with Sky now is a particularly good example of working with IP, I suppose now, and remote working, because it's very expensive to ship things all around the world. I think it's something in the region of like £230 per kilo, and if you're shipping 10 tons worth of equipment around the world, that adds up to a lot.
Yeah,
So any saving you can make on weight, you're onto a winner. So that can then be ploughed into somewhere else in the production potentially, if you're keeping your budget the same, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's not over only the freight and the equipment transport, it's people on site. And I know from a lot of sports events, there's a big focus on looking at remote production as a way of reducing that cost on site. So instead of shipping and flying people out to remote locations to cover these events, you know, the remote production gives you the ability to centralize that in one location and just send out half the crew. I mean, you know, on a Olympics or a Commonwealth scale, that is quite epic.
Yeah.
Amount of cost that goes into just transporting and housing people. Yeah.
And are there any other standout technologies that are making waves at the moment?
No, augmented reality, is that coming in a little bit? Or
Yeah, well, actually, if we could talk a bit about the kind of studio setup we're in now, because that's being used a lot in sport, isn't it? Kind of immersive.
absolutely, yeah.
It is, yeah.
Elaborate on.
Well, I think it's more,
Technology.
Ben can probably give you a better overview of this one.
So yeah, environments like this, they are making differences in particularly in sports broadcast, because environments like this, where it is a live virtual studio environment, you can, where you might have had traditionally a green screen studio, you need to be well trained into using one of those kinds of studios. You're using comfort monitors on the floor to try and work out where it is your hand needs to be and where your sight lines need to be, all that kind of thing. But if you have an environment like this and you can see up on the wall exactly what it is you're meant to be looking at and where you're meant to be pointing, plus all of the extra content that you can add into that, it certainly aids with it. And that will, of course, also help with people that aren't trained in using those kind of environments. So if you did want to have an interview with a particular sports person, you know, come into this environment, let's talk about what you've just done on the pitch, on the slopes, whatever it is. You can put that footage straight up in front of them, and instantly somebody that would be quite uncomfortable in that environment all of a sudden feels a lot more comfortable about talking about what they're being shown.
I think you're into something. I think that AR is not a technology advantage. I think it's a storytelling advantage. I think that using AR in your productions will add to the story, and you can tell the story much better, interact the hosts and the people on camera with the graphics and with the you know, you can have remotely you're talking about that, remotely have your interview objects in the studio sitting next to you, but they're not there, so that interaction, the technology creates a storytelling tool for us, which is fantastic.
And are you seeing AR or mixed reality being used elsewhere in sport, or is it mainly for this type of environment?
Well, I think a classic example was last year at the World Cup in Red Square. ITV bought a studio with a window overlooking Red Square, but they chose to build a complete augmented reality studio, blocking out the window, because they could create a better view and have those gimmicks, sorry, not gimmicks, those added features that you can do it in AR. So, yeah, I think sport, I mean, it's largely a budget thing as well, because, you know, sport at big events have the budgets to do this technology, and it's not particularly cheap at this stage. There's a fair bit of development work if you're going to tailor it to precisely what you want to do, and those costs are coming down quite rapidly, thankfully. But yeah, sport are leading the way there. Discovery or Eurosport used it at the Winter Olympics, ITV used it at the World Cup. And it will find other uses as the costs come down, as it becomes more accessible, as that development time reduces, then it's going to find a lot more outlets on TV and various other places.
And there's some interesting applications for your kind of stadium audience as well. There's telephone apps which which are basically they basically they have a web model behind them, and you can look at a race, you can pick up car GPS data. So you're looking at Formula One race, you look through your phone, and there's a little flag telling you who the drivers are, and driver information, and basically it gives. I mean, AR is predominantly a broadcast technique, but now there's ways to kind of bring that into the real world, so that your stadium audience can appreciate the benefits of all the modelling and the effects as well.
So it's just enhancing the experience and adding an extra layer of
Exactly.
information.
I mean, a lot of sports are fairly difficult to follow, and something like that gives you an extra layer of information that you may be missing in the live experience that everybody at home has as a kind of, they have the perfect front row view through the broadcast coverage of the event.
Yeah.
So it's quite an interesting way to kind of augment that experience.
Did you want to do a demo of the AR in action?
Well, yeah, it was we were going to...
We can do it later.
I think we were going to mention esports at some point, but it's certainly it's now a... we'll do it now.
Save it. Spoil the surprise.
We can do it now. We can do it later.
Spoil the
Whatever.
surprise. In terms of displays within the stadium or venue, are there any developments there?
Well, they're bigger and brighter and bolder. Technology is going forward. With the displays in the environment is very much a budget thing. I mean, you have like your kind of your tier 1 sport, which is like your football, and basically they will build a stadium with all the required display technology within it. Other sports, such as golf, you're going to a golf club which has nothing, and everything comes in as overlay. So there's still a broad spectrum of service to live sports events, and it's very interesting, with the relative price of that display technology, which way certain sports are going with their choice on whether they buy it or whether they hire it, and it's still fairly equal balance. But the quality of what's available is increasing year on year. So what we're able to do with that, and some of the techniques you can use with those displays, giving us much more opportunities to enhance experience.
So it's important to have a narrow pixel pitch, would you say?
Well, they do and they don't. I mean, narrow pixel pitch gets you only so far. I mean, the smaller the pixels are, you suffer contrast problems, because a lot of sport is in bright light conditions and outdoors. So you have to, contrast is becoming a lot more a measure of the quality of the display for an outdoor environment than it ever has been.
Right.
Just because the more pixels you have, the less kind of black plastic you have around the LED screen, and that affects your contrast ratio. So it's all very it's interesting to see how it's gone. But you're right, there has been a big chase towards lower and lower resolutions and finer pixel pitches. But at the end of the day, there comes a point where that doesn't bring you any benefits, and actually it kind of works against what you're trying to achieve.
And are there any innovations in audio that are helping immerse audiences, would you say, within the stadium or venue? Or is that not so much used
Dolby
in
Atmos
sport?
Are we talking about that?
Well, it's more, Dolby Atmos obviously is relevant for the home, isn't it? But the in-venue stuff, there's sort of 360 audio going on, and it's,
Yeah, I mean, basically, if you've got a temporary event going into a sports arena, generally their first port of call is to use the house PA.
Yeah.
The house PA is generally only good enough to do announcements and emergency evacuation. And with the kind of the greater concentration on entertainment and playing music to kind of create the mood with the spectators and fans, that has to be supplemented by additional PA overlay to give the range you need to do those do the music justice. Otherwise, it just doesn't carry the impact that you need it to.
Yeah.
So often when we are supporting those sports events with audio, it's basically in conjunction with a house PA, and that takes some careful modelling, and it's quite. It's not very exciting and sexy, but it's about making sure that the audience get the best quality audio and the reach and from the system that you're installing.
Yeah. And Johan, did you have anything to
Yeah, I want to challenge the organizers and the producers at the venues to use audio much more for the spectators. I think you can use pitch microphones to add audio to the audience, so that you actually hear the ball kicking, the puck the shots, the hits, the everything, so that that experience becomes much better. I think that we can do that. It's just that no one really thought about that. And that's one thing. Another thing is to share, share what we do in broadcast and production with the venues. Share commentary to in-ear, services for people coming to the arenas. Share much more in the audio sort of department at the venues, because we want to have people at the venues coming and experience what we do, so that
I've been
it
asked for
looks good on
commentary.
TV.
I've never been asked for atmospheric effects, so that would be an interesting development.
And it, share commentary, share replays on the big screens. I know that it's a bit interesting conversation, but share more.
But I think you're right. I mean, you said earlier on that the atmosphere in the stadium, having a packed stadium, is really important, and actually putting on a show is key to bringing those people in and retaining them.
And we've started that on sort of the video side, but we should do it more on the audio side.
Yeah.
And coming back a little bit to that display thing, we should challenge the sponsors who's sponsoring the digital signage to allow content onto the displays, like statistics, like more sort of creative way of using that, because then we watch the screens and the actual advertising becomes more valuable.
No, absolutely. Yeah, you get like a full register from the audience in the stadium. We've seen that working. We do an element of that in some of the sports we work with.
Yeah.
And especially when you're creating those moments of theatre, if you're dropping the lights, you don't want to have all your advertising shining out brightly. You need to take control at that point and kill that as well. So then you do have your moment of darkness.
If we can come into the esports side, I think that esports organizers are way ahead of many other organizers today when it comes to an arena experience. They come from different backgrounds, they think differently. So we should, being 50 plus, we should learn from that sort of area.
And just going back to the advertising comment, do you think AR could be useful in terms of that side of things in the stadium?
Well, I was going to chip in and say, actually, we're at the point where what you see on the TV does not necessarily have to be what's on that LED display. So we key in alternative advertising occasionally on some events, and they are big events generally, for different audiences. So you have to be very careful you get it right. You don't put the alcoholic advertising in the Middle East, and you don't put the cigarette advertising in Europe, but there is there's a good commercial model for the various TV audiences to get their own licenses, their own advertising, so they get specific advertising for that region. So that would lend those boards to be more of to have more entertainment value, because now the advertisers are happy, they're still getting their message to the TV audiences, and yet the live audience can now be entertained by those as banners. That's an interesting sort of potential.
But at the same time, you have to be quite careful with it as well, because I think it's been fairly controversial with what they've been doing with the Formula One recently, is creating the Heineken star over the top of the track in augmented reality. That didn't go down too well, I think, with a lot of fans. But some of the stuff has worked so well, people haven't even noticed that it has actually been augmented reality at all.
Well, exactly, but you have to balance that out with the spectator experience going to the actual event. If everything becomes virtual and then they don't pay any attention to the audience will be virtual as well. They won't be there. They'll go and find something a bit more exciting and dynamic to get involved in.
Yeah. I'd just like to move on to esports now, just to discuss the technologies that are having most impact in that area, and maybe discuss some examples as well, if possible. So, Ben, did you want to?
Yeah, so
elaborate?
this is where I'm going to get my glamorous assistant in.
Ta-da.
I just kind of wanted to just point out something that's really interesting. This was a project which NEP and Creative Technology both worked on together. It was in South Korea, which was the League of Legends finals. And it shows a really, really good kind of example of AR that can be used in a live event that's also good for, you know, the guys that are at home. So it's going to run for a little while, but as it comes along, it will work quite nicely. So this is, as I say, it was the opening ceremony for Riot Games for their League of Legends finals. And they put on a kind of pop concert with, here they are, with some characters within that environment, along with a real K-pop girl band. So these, you know, characters from the game are doing the same dance moves, they're singing along at the same time, but it's pretty seamless. So what we're seeing here is, you know, what you're seeing at home, but actually the big screens within the stadium are showing off that same kind of experience. So there's a really, really good example, and this is what they're doing in the esports world. You know, it's not being done in the traditional sports world because maybe we're not thinking in the same way that these younger guys are. So it is a genuinely really good example of pushing the boundaries of technology and where things can be taken.
Yeah, and what's quite interesting, in e-games you don't really have a field of play. So if you're putting on an e-game, a live e-game event in a stadium, you have to kind of create something. You've got the whole sort of arena to dress, really. So, I mean, a lot of them bring in elements from the game, so they kind of create an environment which is all the fans of the games actually recognise and bring it to life. And we've done some over in BlitzCon, our US operation did a projection mapped environment, so it included windows for the game relay, but actually it created a kind of moving kind of landscape around that to kind of to make more of it, because otherwise, you know, I think one of the challenges in esports is you've got, you know, some high profile players that are in little cubicles. So you can't really get close to them. The audience can't really see them unless you can get a camera in there. But their environment has to be protected, so you don't see too much of that apart from a few fixed camera positions. And then you've got the game relay. But everything else is down to is a creative kind of treatment of that arena. And I mean, you look at that League of Legends thing. Amazing amount of technology went into that space. And it really is a kind of crossover between entertainment and, I get e-sport, you could call it, to kind of bring that show to life, really.
So it's more of a multimedia experience.
Absolutely, yeah.
Ben, did you mention that it was NEP and CT and partners doing that together?
I did.
Yeah, you've just done it again. So
You've done it again.
Marks, yeah.
Did you say that was NEP and CT? Goodness.
And, Alan, have you had any experiences with esports?
Limited experience of e-sport, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
So it's the numbers are hard to argue with. And we did some work with, I won't mention another company, another German OB company at Wembley. It's a new one for us in television to make that look good. It's kind of that balance again between the audience get a good experience. How do you translate that onto television? How do you immerse them in the game, or do you immerse them in the event? We had 23 cameras at Wembley Arena doing, I think that was a League of Legends event actually. And it's a new discipline for me. It's not something I'm very experienced in. I'm trying to get my head around it, trying to accept it, but it's a challenge for us in traditional television how we portray that and do that.
It's quite interesting, isn't it? Because the traditional kind of broadcast medium for esports has been streaming, and they have stream platforms, and you know, the kind of the audience they have is a very young audience, and they're all on their Twitch, which is the kind of platform they all sit on, and all of this is there's esports broadcast all the time from all around the world. So, it kind of it runs a bit. It kind of jars a little bit with the traditional model of sport, which is through a broadcaster, broadcast rights. So it's a very kind of mixed kind of ecosystem there at the moment, and it's difficult to kind of ally it to a traditional sports kind of sort of model.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I think that we are traditionalists coming from the old world. Have a lot to learn from esport and esport organizers and the way they think and how they want to challenge the sort of us traditionalists.
Sure. Yeah. I agree with you.
So if you are open-minded to it, we can learn a lot, and the other way around. If they come to us and we can help them to create their vision in a way. So. We have to be open-minded.
I'll try.
To these guys because they're going to rule the world.
Yeah, indeed. No, you can't argue with those numbers, can you?
So it's already big business, but do you think it will grow even more? Do you think it's possible for it to get even more popular?
It seems to be on a very sharp growth curve at the moment.
Yeah, it has to be. I mean, you look at the numbers now. You look at the revenue figures that these gaming companies are making against the movie industry, and it's catching up, if not taking over. So, yeah, it has to.
But also, what other sport could you actually, what we're looking at and what we're talking about are the finals of these events. But anybody can take part in these events at the very first stage. So so this is why there's such a fan base. I mean, probably half the people that go to watch the final have actually been participating in the competition, But there is an elite level of these contestants where it ultimately ends up in. But often you'll get I think Fortnite is one of the very more popular formats at the moment, and you get some 16-year-old guy who's he's not a professional, but he wins a big tournament, and it's quite interesting.
Well, putting on something for a Fortnite tournament brings its own challenges because you start off with 100 players.
Yeah.
So, for a director, I should imagine that's probably an absolute nightmare. I don't know who you would even start to look at, because that person you could be following could go out in 2 minutes.
Yeah, but esport normally has two directors, one in-game director and one sort of show director. So you share. It's another setup.
Right.
Is that more of a challenge then than your typical sporting event, would you say?
I mean, all big events are challenges,
Yes,
and esports as well as it's a new discipline, and you just need to learn the mechanics and
And just moving on to broadcast, are there any techniques or technologies that you're seeing making an impact, Alan, in terms of cameras or comm systems?
I mean, we've touched on a few of them. There's most major events are UHD now, 4K. There will be 8K coverage of the Rugby World Cup, but that has a very limited audience. NHK, to their credit, have persisted, and they do have an 8K channel in Japan. But I can't see that really taking off anywhere else in the world. But there will be 8K coverage, so the definition's improved. And then across the board, there's been sort of gradual improvements in the amount of high-speed cameras, a number of replays you can have. So yeah, there's still a lot of development in the core technology. And then it comes down to connectivity and what's available. The connectivity is allowing things like remote production, which we spoke about earlier. So you can have a lot more camera feeds off-site, to the extent that you could mix a whole match off-site, but more at major events. You're making cameras available to rights holders so they can do their own analysis after the match with their own presenters and look at different angles of the coverage. A lot of data now, a lot of statistics, a lot of live data, including sort of medical data coming off the athletes, biodata if you like. All that sort of thing is now integrated into the coverage as well. So there's a lot more information, a lot more hunger for a lot more detail, basically.
And would you say capturing multiple angles is becoming even more important? Are there any advances there?
Yeah, there's still the audience for the director that does the cut for you. There's still the audience at a major world final for the director to do the coverage and show and give you the camera he thinks is the one you should be looking at. But as my friend says, I'm a traditionalist and I'm going to support that. There is a growing audience that want to choose. And there's a growing audience that want to view it from the referee's camera all the time. There's a growing audience that want to view it from a corner flag camera maybe. And or more importantly to them, they want the choice. They want to be able to sit there with an iPad or whatever and choose that camera and look at it. Or they want to follow a player. They're a specific fan of a player. They pick up a camera that is just following him or her. And so we, as as a broadcast technology providers, have to make sure that the technology is affordable and can provide those sort of that number of feeds, which is growing.
Well, there's quite a development from a lot of the suppliers into sort of AI systems to follow the game and kind of automate a lot of the game coverage. Do you?
Yeah.
Kind of, that's a question for you, really. I mean, how do you see that kind of take?
We've experimented. Absolutely. Doing a of a job. Yeah, it's interesting, and it's and we're trying to find a place for AI in live event coverage, and it's quite. And there's some very big companies involved, and it evolves and it learns, as we know. And it does get better. It's not quite there yet from my point of view. So the type of standard of sport coverage that we aim for, AI is a notch down. Yeah. So it has its place, and where we've found its place at the moment for us is it can do a rough cut for a highlights package. So we can allow AI to watch a tennis match, for example. It will choose what it thinks is the highlights from the noise of the audience, from the score, or from the way the players move, and it will present to us what it thinks is the highlight package. Now, what we've found is that's not good enough to transmit, but that does save several hours of somebody watching that match and cutting those bits out. So it does reduce workload. And so it's beginning to make its first steps into broadcast coverage, and as it grows and gets more clever, it will do more coverage that we will be prepared to put out live to an audience. And we do use it in search parameters as well for archive. So we can give it, it can use facial recognition technology to go and find a player in a team.
Oh, right.
It is, I've seen some very impressive demonstrations where where it looks for facial recognition. And even though all that is held as digits, it still somehow manages to find that player and brings out that clip of the archive. So it's fascinating technology, and it is rapidly developing.
And are there any other specialist cameras any of you have seen or that are being developed at the moment for specific sports?
I think you talked about the referee cam, and and you've been talking a bit about wearable technology as well. I mean, this is all kind of an interesting area that's just starting to come into things. But the wearable camera that.
To be able to see sportsmen doing these things from their perspective is, we've not really been able to have the technology to be able to do those kinds of things in the past. So, watching a skier going down at breakneck speeds, hurtling along, and I think I'd kill myself just to, within the first 5 seconds at the speed a lot of these guys go at. But being able to do that live, we've not been able to do that kind of things before.
So they're just getting smaller and smaller.
Exactly, and like the kind of the rugby referee wears it, and he's basically in the scrum.
Yeah,
I mean, it gives you like a real kind of feeling for how big these guys are.
And then also,
sometimes that doesn't come across.
Not just the camera technology with that as well. It's the fact that you've got a microphone right in there in the middle of the scrum. It's to give you that those loud hits that are right in there in the middle of what's going on.
Yeah.
It's because we have to compete with esports. That's part of the drive.
Make it a bit more visceral.
Yeah, exactly.
They can put cameras wherever they want.
Yeah.
And just moving back to, so we were talking about 4K earlier, and with talk moving from 4K to 8K, what's everyone's views on that? Is the demand there, or do you see that is demand being pushed by the Tokyo Olympics? Who would like to go first? Johan?
I would. We have a standout here showing our collaboration with Panasonic and their 8K capabilities, and that's. I see it not just as a new 8K channel experience. I see it as a production tool. Talking about the little smaller events and smaller productions, that 8K cameras and technologies that can track players and and help us automate productions and all that. Digitally zoom into an 8K picture down to a 4-camera HD production.
Yeah.
Yes, give you the region of interest that you want as a kind of almost like the camera system makes you the director almost. You don't have the operator anymore. You create a big 8K canvas, and you can take windows out of that over that overall picture, a very good resolution, and that becomes your kind of output. It saves you like 4 camera operators and 2 camera channels.
And also, it could add to a larger production. Put cameras in positions where you cannot have camera operators, so I think it's going to be a mix of technologies that can help.
I think the
create a better
8K is going to be a lot more useful to us, and the technologies that some of the companies are developing to semi-automate the process of capturing sports. And I don't know if you said, Alan, that it doesn't quite do it for you at the top level of where you are, but there's plenty of lower tier sports that would really benefit from a level of coverage that you could achieve through this kind of system.
And are you also seeing venues change? Because obviously with the Tottenham Stadium being multi-purpose, you could have a football match one day, NFL the next. Are you noticing any other developments in the sites or venues sporting events taking place in?
I was going to say, a lot of these venues are now, they're trying to produce more fan engagement.
Yeah.
So, and what you're also kind of seeing now with a lot of these stadiums and these sports clubs is that they're going after the young fans now, because what they want to do is, Stoke or whomever want to grab hold of that 8-year-old, and they want him to be a Stoke fan for the rest of their lives, because they can look at all the numbers of their fans and they see that they've probably got an ageing population of their fans that are coming in. So a lot of them now are kind of gearing themselves towards that, so they're going with those experiences that may give themselves more to a younger audience, particularly, again, esports, they're taking them away from that. So we're trying to now engage those younger fans, I think. So you're starting to see the technologies and the experiences coming into these stadiums.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think obviously the stadiums are there to do a job, and generally, if it's a football stadium, it's to host half the football matches of the club over the course of the year. But they all want to make use of those facilities outside of that, and they want concerts, and they want events to go into these spaces, and I think they're paying a little bit more attention now to what the requirements might be for those additional events, which actually generate unexpected revenue and improve their kind of the cost base on their business. And one way of doing that is putting a lot of enabling technology in things like dark fiber networks, so you can actually, some of the kind of techniques we might use for putting it, some of the technology you might bring for a music event.
Right.
It's very easily deliverable, and you can run your signals around the stadium and pick up signals where you need to.
So you're learning from other markets quite a lot.
Well, it's just kind of, I think, if you look at like Wimbledon as obviously as a venue we work at all the time, they've got an amazing fibre network that they've installed in there, and that really has reduced the amount of sort of overlay cable that goes in. I don't know, Alan, you might have some experience of Wimbledon, but it used to be pretty much 100% all overlay, and they've put in a fibre ring there, which is absolutely fantastic, and it actually cuts down a lot what we would call a pre-cable going into an event, and actually, it saves them money, and everything's a lot more reliable and robust because of that. But that's the sort of thing that we kind of find is a lot more useful when we're talking to our clients about what they might like to do. Often, if you've got like a big cable run to factor into everything, that can actually kibosh the whole thing, because it may prove too costly to do that. But with the installed facilities such as signal transport really make our life a lot easier.
And the Tottenham Stadium is a good example as well of because it's brand new. It's everybody's a bit green with them with their stadium now. It's rather nice.
Don't you think that they will swap all the monitors in the arenas to like this?
To portrait.
To portrait? I think so. Otherwise, the kids won't come.
Just really, really tall stadiums.
Maybe.
It's the goals each side.
We'll have to turn all the cameras around on the sides, won't we?
We have to start producing.
Yeah, it's not so great with the wide shot.
I know.
Never mind.
I think we're running a little over time, but I just wanted to finish with what you see sporting events of the future looking like. Do you think it'll be a more personal experience? How will you cover the events moving forward? So if we could just ask everyone that quickly.
Okay, I think they'll be much more aligned with the other forms of entertainment you see out there. I think they'll have to engage a lot more with their audience to retain that audience, and they'll put a lot more effort into that area.
Yeah, a lot more options for the audience. So rather than a prescribed single outlet of coverage, I think there's going to be a lot of options as to how you view your sport, how you digest it, and the same at the venue. Won't be enough just to be able to sit there and eat your pie and have a pint of beer and watch it. You're going to have to be entertained. It's going to have to be an event rather than just a match.
Yeah, and Johan?
Well, I hope that it's all about content. It's about offering the audience content when they come to a venue, just as they are offered content everywhere else through this.
Yeah.
So content will be king, even also in the arenas.
Okay. And Ben?
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, why should the experience at home be better than it would be actually inside the stadium? It should be a better experience. You're paying all the money to be there. You want something to go along with it.
To be honest, my kid, I have a 15-year-old, he don't care about technology. It's just there for him. He cares about what's inside the technology.
Yeah. Okay, and are there any questions from the audience? Hopefully we've got time. Yep.
Yep. Oh.
Hi there. I find it interesting that the subject of social media hasn't come up. It was only about 5 years ago where trying to engage with younger audiences in sporting events was all focused on social media. And I find that quite pertinent at the moment because Mark Zuckerberg only said last month that he thinks the age of the dominance of open social media is coming to an end, and social media will refocus on private groups and WhatsApp and things like that. So have we reached saturation point in sport? Is there still a place for more growth for social media to engage with younger audiences? How do you see that progressing in the future? Can it go somewhere, or is it just expected and it is what it is now?
You start.
Yeah, I kind of agree that it's reached a bit of a plateau. I mean, events do have their social media teams now, and you will have people producing digital content for social media at a world event. So these are clips of 30 seconds or even shorter, designed to be easily digestible and to hit those platforms and so forth. So we're producing content for it. We have teams that work on it, but it's interesting that we were doing that 2 or 3 years ago, and actually it hasn't moved on dramatically. We may be producing a bit more, but not dramatically more. So it's an interesting point, and I can't really predict where it's going to go. I would suggest it's not going to disappear, but it has reached a bit of a plateau, I think.
I would say social media is dead. Not per se, but what I mean is social media as social media. It's just an output. It's just a distribution form.
Another way of consuming the content.
It's just one of many ways to consume your content. One is going to the arena. One is sitting home at your big 55-inch screen, and one is, using this. And I think that it will just sort of melt together. So social media is as a term will kind of disappear, and it's just a way to communicate with an audience.
We kind of envisage.
Sorry, but I think that we have discussed social media, but just didn't use the word social media.
we kind of envisage the audience watching the screen on their big screen, watching the match, and on the here having an iPad or whatever, and engaging with their friends on social media or whatever. But like you said, that could be WhatsApp. That could be your group of friends on WhatsApp or whatever. So, but yeah, specific content on social media, maybe less. I can't see it growing dramatically. It's a way of them engaging with others with the same interest.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, people, if they want to comment on the match, they want to comment with their group of friends. They don't want to broadcast it to the world. You know, that's not what that's not the point of banter, is it? You know.
Well, I think that people will continue to talk together and comment what they are looking for, but they will not call it social media. They will just it will be there as a part of everyday life. Short form content, long term content. It's just So I think that in production and in broadcast we will have the social media department not down the corridor in a special room. It's going to be as a part of everything else. Exactly. In the trucks, in the galleries, everywhere. It's just
part of your distribution as the production of the event, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. It's exactly what we do. Yeah. We make available at a world event, we make available on the central server all those forms of content. So you can have a 1 hour highlight, a 30-minute highlight, or a 20-second highlight, depending on how you want to digest it.
And this is why media management is such an important part of broadcasting and events and everything. Store and share.
Yeah, I mean, I think, going back to Matt's question, the early days of social media, it was really exciting to be able to go and reach out to your audience, and then they would provide content for your live show, so they could share photos and and make comments, and you would run competitions based on it. But I do see that dropping down a level, and it's not quite so. There's got no wow factor left in it, really.
No, they've all kind of been experimenting in different ways. Haven't they? A good case study of that is actually Formula E, because they're trying to engage people even before the races. Who's your favourite driver and all this kind of stuff, and you have to do your hashtags that go along with it. And those drivers that get the most retweets or whatever it is, I don't know, they then get what's called fan boost during the race. So they actually get an extra boost for their car that make it go faster throughout the race. So it's a really interesting way of using social media. I'm not sure from a purist point of view it's the greatest way of using it, but they don't care about that, because they don't care about the 40-something, guys, 50-something. Yeah. They want the younger audience, these esports guys, that understand all of the social media.
Do you agree?
Yes.
Well, now you have Instagram Live and Facebook Live. You have so many different people that are covering the same event at once. Do you think that's the way it's going to go? That continue doing that?
They've made a bit of a step in to try and disrupt the broadcast market, the social media channels, and they have a bit of weight behind them. But I mean, I don't.
Yeah, I don't think it's been altogether successful as a rival. I mean, Amazon are notable, but Facebook as well are looking to buy broadcast rights now. So they've decided that actually there's more of a market in having the full broadcast coverage rather than just the social media chatter and what they're allowed to show on that.
Just to get eyeballs on the platform, isn't it? You go for there for one thing, they think you'll go there and start buying another, or looking at other things at the same time. So,
Any other questions? No? Okay. Well, hope you've all enjoyed it. Hope it's been useful to the audience, and thank you to all our panellists.
Thank you.
Thank you.
No, thank you, mate.